All right. Can we take a moment? Somebody is. Okay, so. All right.
Good now.
Yes. Thank you, Chris. All right. Let's try that again. Good evening and welcome to the June 22nd, 2023 regular meeting of San Diego Community Power Board of Directors. I am Joe LaCava, Chair of the Board and the representative for the City of San Diego. Welcome to the members of the public, community power staff, and board members for joining us in person today. I will now call the June 22nd, 2023 regular meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power to order. Kimberly, would you please call the roll?
Yes, City of San Diego Representative,
LaCava present.
County of San Diego Representative, Imperial Beach Representative,
Right here.
La Mesa Representative,
Parent here.
National City Representative, Chula Vista Representative,
Travis here.
Encinitas Representative.
Kinsey here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Kimberly. And we'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're able, please stand, face the flag, hand over your heart. Begin. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A couple of notes on the order of business this evening. We will be first taking up the closed session agenda. And for the public's awareness, we will take public comment on closed session items 1 and 2. Then the board will then step out while convening the closed session. Following closed session, we will return and report out before resuming our full agenda. At the conclusion of the regular meeting, or towards the end of the regular meeting, we will convene for a special meeting of the Board of Directors to hear item 1 on that agenda. And that will not happen until 6:30 at the earliest. I will remind everyone of the order in the process as we move along. So let's start with closed session. Kimberly, do we have any public comment on the closed session item?
There is no public comment.
Okay, with that, we will quickly move and we will end the regular session and we will convene in closed session. As I mentioned, a report out from closed session will follow. Okay, the board is returned. Kimberly, can you please call the roll?
City of San Diego Representative,
LaCava present.
County of San Diego Representative, Imperial Beach Representative,
Allí represente.
La Mesa Representative,
Parent here.
National City Representative, Chula Vista Representative,
Travis present.
Encinitas Representative.
Kinsey here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Kimberly. To our council, is there a report out from closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board met in closed session on items 1 and 2 as stated on the agenda, and there's no reportable action from closed session.
Okay, thank you, sir. Quorum is again present. Next up on the agenda is special presentations and interventions. And I believe our CEO would like to introduce a new hire.
Good evening. Yes, I would like to call Jack Clark to the podium to introduce himself. He is our new Chief Operating Officer. Welcome, Jack.
Indeed, welcome, Jack. Look forward to a few minutes of introducing yourself to the board.
All right, hear me okay?
Mhm.
Good afternoon, Chairman of the board and members of the board. My name is Jack Clark. I am truly honored to be joining this amazing team here at San Diego Community Power. I just wanted to share a few notes on my background professionally with you all today. I've worked in the San Diego region in sustainable energy since 2010, including work on energy policy through regulatory and legislative affairs, public affairs and marketing, data analytics, and customer services and programming. Few highlights include the following. My time at the Center of Sustainable Energy as the Director of Programs, where I worked here in the San Diego community regionally, statewide and nationally, distributed energy resource market transformation initiatives at great scale. engaging in workforce development, working with the California Public Utilities Commission, California Energy Commission, California Air Resource Board, the Federal Department of Energy, SDG&E, and other investor and municipal owned utilities. That range of initiatives spans widely. I worked specifically with the San Diego regional local governments over that period, as well as large scale local and statewide marketing and outreach efforts as well. And in fact, that's first where I learned about community choice aggregation when I worked for the Center for Sustainable Energy, as we supported local government development and initiatives on climate action plans here regionally. And CCAs were often referred to as a potential solution for reaching 100% renewable electricity at that time. I moved on from the Center for Sustainable Energy to become the Deputy Director of Energy and Sustainability at the City of San Diego, where among other things, I was the CCA feasibility study, on the CCA feasibility study research team, which led to the development of San Diego Community Power. So I have some history with the organization. And also where I represented this city in CCA regulatory meetings and workshops at the Public Utilities Commission. Among other topics where I represented the city at PUC, the Energy Commission, CARB, and DOE. I also managed the city's utility budget, including more than 3,000 utility accounts across all rate classes, worked with staff and SDG&E on account data analysis, forecasting, and led the development of the city's municipal energy strategy, and sat on the California Local Government Sustainable Energy Coalition's board, representing the region here of all local governments. I also spent several years at the LA and Ventura County-based CCA, the Clean Power Alliance, the state's fourth largest load-serving entity, as a senior director of customer programs, working closely with our regulatory, legislative, public affairs teams, and also working quite closely with our procurement team on local procurement initiatives. All the while utilizing data and analytics to design effective customer service, engagement, and impactful program design. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm very excited to be joining you all. I look forward to working with you very closely for the benefit of our communities. Thank you.
Welcome aboard, Jack. Why don't you join us up here? And I want to thank Karen and all the executive team who went through a pretty extensive process to identify Jack as the right fit for the organization. So look forward to good work you're doing. And I look forward to more smiles on your face now that she doesn't wear two hats. So there we go. And Eric as well, who also did double duty. So Dr. Washington, thank you for that good work. So let's move on. Are there any items to be added, withdrawn, or reordered on the agenda?
No, there are not.
Okay, thank you. So next up will be non-agenda public comment. I want to note that written board public comments submitted before the board meeting were emailed to all the directors prior to the board meeting and will be posted on the website at the beginning of the meeting, if any. Kimberly, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
No, we do not.
So moving along, we will go to the consent calendar. Besides the usual receiving files. I want to take particular note of the approval of a second amendment for professional services to Keith and Fox for legal and regulatory services. The third amendment for professional services to Mar Accountancy for accounting services. Approval of a professional service agreement with Innovation Network for Communities for building and housing stock analysis and funding gap analysis. And approval of the Community Advisory Committee appointment of members for terms ending in 2023. Are there any directors that would like to pull any item from the consent calendar? Not seeing any requests. Kimberly, do we have any public comment on the consent items?
No, we do not have any public comment.
Right. Now I'll open up to the board for comments or a motion on the consent items.
This is Cindy. I'll move approval of the consent.
Yeah.
Second.
And Parent second. With no further discussion, we have a motion to move the consent agenda by member Hensy and a second by member Parent. Since we have a small group, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That does pass 5-0. So thank you for that. Now we'll go to the regular agenda. This is item 13. And this is approval of a second amendment to the CEO employment agreement. I'll turn it over to Nick Norvell to present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the board knows, in April of 2022, San Diego Community Power entered into a chief executive officer employment agreement with Karen Burns as CEO. The agreement was amended in October 2022 relating to the term and other provisions. And pursuant to the terms of the agreement, the CEO is to be evaluated by the board of directors on an annual basis. That was recently completed, and as part of the CEO's performance evaluation, the board under the agreement may consider merit increases in salary based on performance as well as market condition. The board has met in closed session on this, and under the Brown Act, a verbal summary of a change to executive compensation is required to be verbally summarized at a meeting before approval. The recommended action, which includes a summary of what is recommended, is as follows. The recommended action is approve second amendment to chief executive officer employment agreement in the form included in the agenda packet, along with the addition of language providing for a 5% merit increase and a 6.4% cost of living increase for a new base salary of $418,950, which is effective as of July 1st, 2023. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Nick. Kimberly, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, there's no public comment.
Okay, I'll now turn it over to the board members for comments and a motion.
I'll just have a quick comment.
Yes, please.
Yeah, just want to say thank you to Karen for going above and beyond, and we're really lucky to have you here with us, and we look forward to the year ahead, and I would move approval of this item if there are any other comments.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by member Hensy, second by member Geary. Any other comments by board members?
I'll echo what Director Hensy said. We're very grateful to all of your hard work, and we are in very good shape, and it's thank you for your leadership.
And I'll have my comments as well, especially as chair. We've had a lot of conversations. The work that you did immediately once you were hired to recognize where the organization stood and where some of the gaps were, especially in our human resources component, and then handling that dual function with the Dr. Washington of sharing that both operating officer and the way you've actually been able to really do a very effective hiring program. And I can see that in my interactions with various employees of the organization. And congratulations, we are $1 billion organization now. So well done. Really appreciate that work. So with that, we have a motion to move the recommendation by member Hensy and a second by member Geary. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Not hearing any. That passes 5-0. So with that, we will now go on to item 14, which is approval of the FY 23-24 operating budget and fiscal year 24-28 capital investment plan. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Eric Washington to present this item.
Thank you, Chair McCullough and directors of the board. I'll be presenting our budget for fiscal year 2024, as well as the capital investment plan to cover a 5-year period, fiscal year 2024 through fiscal year 2020. Next slide. So we initiated our budget development process for fiscal year 2024 in the month of February. So we've tracked very well up to this point, where we are bringing to the board the final draft of the budget and seeking approval of the board for the fiscal year 2024 budget. Next slide, please. I'll start by saying that the budget was presented at the Finance and Risk Management Committee meeting on June 8th and was passed unanimously with a recommendation to advance to the board for final approval. We also made a presentation to the Community Advisory Committee just to provide a high-level review of what we've budgeted for fiscal year 2024. The slide before you now really shows the trajectory of our growth from the very inception in 2019 through this upcoming fiscal year budget cycle. To the comment that the chair made just a moment ago, we are $1 billion operation is what we budgeted for fiscal year 2024. Next slide, please. So just a couple of brief highlights in terms of our growth. So fiscal year 2024 will mark the full 12-month fiscal cycle where we have enrollment of all 4 phases of our program in the San Diego region. So we're adding, to support that growth, 23 employees for fiscal year 2024, bringing our organization to just under 60 team members. So we can make sure that we can support the continued outreach and education and awareness of our community members of the San Diego Community Power. And for the first fiscal year, we are introducing the capital investment plan, which will serve as a public document documenting how we're spending and funding those public dollars. Next slide, please. I wanted to pause just for a moment to walk the board and the public through the changes of what we presented during our draft phase of the budget to ultimately arrive at the final draft of the budget being presented tonight. So the only material change that we'd like to report out, comparing what we presented back in the month of May and what we're presenting now in June, is a $23 million reduction in what we've budgeted for energy. And primarily that is a result of us being more hedged in terms of our energy portfolio. And during the month of June, as we were back in the month of May. So that's where that savings is being realized. So essentially we're locked in those costs as opposed to being subject to unhedged market forward curve pricing for those resources. So just wanted to highlight that for the board and public consumption. Next slide, please. So in summary, we've budgeted for $1.3 billion in gross revenues for fiscal year 2024, taking into account 4% consideration in terms of uncollectible accounts. We know that we're in an environment where more of our members may have challenges meeting those obligations with regard to energy. So we wanted to make sure that we budgeted appropriately for that, to take into consideration the fiscal impact that it may have, but also give us the flexibility to work to the extent possible with our customers. And so total expenses budgeted for this period is $1.2 billion. That gets us a little closer to our reserve target of 180 days cash on hand. So we are on a positive trajectory to accomplish that strategic plan goal. Next slide, please. This slide rolls forward fiscal year 2024 through fiscal year 2028. And it gives us a perspective in terms of our reserve bill and the timing and our position with regard to our reserves relative to today's cash on hand and how that relates to our expenses. Next slide, please. So as I alluded to just a moment ago, our personnel growth. So we are again planning to add 23 members to our team, which will put us at 59 members at San Diego Community Power. You can see how we compare to some of the other community choice aggregators or other CCAs throughout the state of California with regard to personnel count. Next slide. So you can expect to see in the board package, and this information will also be available online, is our full operating budget for fiscal year 2024 in what we are referring to as our budget book. Along with that, you'll also see the document that will document our program spending through our capital investment plans and other programs and projects as they roll out in the years to come. Chair, that concludes my presentation of this item. I will turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Washington. Kimberly, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
So I just want to make one opening comment. I remember last year, which was my first year on the board, I made a comment that I didn't think the budget presentation really matched up to what we were doing. And you've exceeded my expectations in terms of the budget documentation. Well done, sir. I know that took a lot of extra work to do that, but as a $1 billion operation, I think we're moving. So So with that, I'll turn it over to the board members for any comments and a motion. Yes.
I expressed this during the briefing, but I just want to thank Dr. Washington for all of your work in getting us through. I think, sorry.
Oh.
Yep. Just grab this one.
Can you hear me now? That's right. Sorry, I forgot. I just want to thank Dr. Washington for getting us to where we need to be, especially as it relates to our reserves, cash on hand, and to our ambitious but important goal of getting to 180 days. So really thankful for that and for all your work.
Yeah, and actually, my apologies, I wanted to ask, because I think you and member Parent are on the management finance. There would, since Mayor McCann is not here, if there's any comments about what came out of that discussion that might be helpful to the other board members.
I think just that this is a good presentation that neatly paralleled what we've heard at that earlier today. I think we took a action to recommend it for the board.
Yes.
And that continues to be my recommendation.
Just a couple of comments on my part. I mean, having gone through this once before, I appreciate that we've raised the uncollectible component, recognition of some of the economic challenges as we come out of the pandemic. So thank you for that. I appreciate especially savings on the energy side, because you understand the markets, team understands the markets and knows how to hedge to result in cost savings, which helps us get to meeting our reserve goals that much faster. So thank you for that. And then I had one question. It looked like FY25, you're projecting a little bit less revenue. Was that a kind of a more conservative approach in terms of where rates might land, or was there something else?
Thank you for that question, Chair Alacaba, but that's exactly it. We wanted to make sure we took a conservative position with regard to the direction that rates may go in the next fiscal reporting cycle. So we thought it to take that into consideration now, and just to see how things play out in the future. But that's exactly the reason. So thanks again for the question.
Okay, and I very much appreciate that. As I learned from you, the value proposition, better price for a better product, is certainly our goal, and we're certainly achieving that. So, do I have a motion?
Almost.
Member Gary,
I'll second.
member Karen. So with that, all in favor of moving the staff recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
And that passes 5-0. So thank you very much, Dr. Washington, our CEO, for that good work, and everybody that works on that. I know that putting together budgets like that is never easy. So thank you for that very, very good work. So moving on to item 15. This is an update on the disadvantaged communities and community solar green tariff programs. I'll turn it over to Tessa Tovar, who is already waiting to present this item. Tessa, take it away.
Thank you, Chair LaCava. My name is Tessa Tovar. I am the lead for the Disadvantaged Communities Green Tariff, or DAC-GT, and the Community Solar Green Tariff Programs, or CSGT. I want to note that these two green tariff programs, you've heard of them before, typically in the regulatory and legislative space, as we had to go through the regulatory and legislative process to become program administrators for these two programs. I want to take a moment to also acknowledge the fact that SDCP, we use the term communities of concern instead of DACs. Because these are two CPUC designed and funded programs, they of course named them, but we'll have the opportunity to rename them in the near future, which will be more aligned with our ethos. Next slide, please. So a little bit of a background. This process began back in September of 2021, where we filed an advice letter with the commission requesting the capacity from SDG&E for DAC-GT and CSGT located within our founding member agencies. Later that year in November, we had PPUC accept and approve our allocation request, making SDCP's program the largest allocation in the state. Next year, in October of 2022, we submitted our implementation plan with the CPUC requesting that we become program administrators or PAs of both programs. And in March of this year, the CPUC voted and approved making us program administrators of both programs. Just last month, we filed the most recent advice letter requesting the approval of the solicitation documents that we will be using to solicit bids for these two programs. Next slide, please. To zoom out, a general overview, the description and benefits of DAC-GT and CSGT. The CPUC designed both of these programs to increase renewable generation among residences in disadvantaged communities per the Cal Enviros Green 4.0. It offers 100% renewable energy to customers that are eligible for Karen Farah, and it provides an additional 20% discount on top of the Karen Farah discount. This shall result in an estimated 55% overall discount on eligible customers' bills. And as a reminder, both of these programs are fully funded by the CPUC. I mentioned on the previous slide that SDCP has the largest allocation in the state. For DAC-GT, that amounts to almost 16 megawatts, which has the capacity to serve almost 7,000 customers. For CSGT, we have 4.38 megawatts, which can serve almost 2,000 customers. These two programs are very exciting, but I want to manage expectations and make you all aware that eligible customers will be auto-enrolled in 2025 when new projects come online. Next slide, please. In regards to eligibility, the CPUC has defined an eligible DAC as census tracts that either one, score in the top 25% in the current Cal EPA Cal Enviro Green 4.0 on a statewide basis, or two, are one of the census tracts that score in the highest 5% of Cal Enviro Green's pollution burden, but that do not have an overall score. You'll notice the map on the right-hand side of the slide with 3 pins. Well, there should be 3 pins. We have one in Chula Vista, one in National City, and the other is meant to be in the city of San Diego. SDCP has over 40 eligible census tracts located in these 3 member jurisdictions. If you don't see your member agency with a pin, please do not fret. We have a proceeding referred to as the GAP proceeding occurring concurrently. Stands for the Green Access Program proceeding, in which joint CCAs that are program administrators for DAC-GT and or CSGT are requesting modifications to the requirements. So if that change is made, that could enlarge the pool of eligible locations that these projects can be in. We'll have the answer to that proceeding by the end of this summer. I also want to note that I have reached out to your teams from Chula Vista National City and the city of San Diego in regards to eligible land on member agency property that might be suitable for DAC-GT and CSGT projects. Continuing in eligibility, I want to note that DAC-GT projects can be sited in any DAC and SDG&E service territory. However, for CSGT, projects must be located in a DAC and SDCP service territory. The reason for that is because CSGT projects must be within 5 miles of participating customers. And lastly, CSGT projects must have a community sponsor on behalf of the customers. We'll get a little bit more into that on the next slide. A community sponsor is one of the requirements the CPUC has for CSGT projects. The eligibility and requirements are as follows. Community sponsors must be a nonprofit, CBO, local government entity, or school. Their role is to work with the project developer to encourage program participation in the community, and they're required to include job training and workforce development in their efforts to benefit these local communities. SDCP will do a pairing of the sorts, or we'll have webinars and outreach to potential community sponsors and solar developers so that they can meet and have these projects be more viable. But the benefits as to why you might think a potential community sponsor should be involved is because the community sponsor also gets a 20% bill discount for their usage for up to 25% of the project's estimated output. These two last bullet points are especially important because a community sponsor ensures community involvement, awareness, and substantial interest of the community members of the subscribing to the project. Lastly, it captures community suggested host sites and verification that the site chosen for the bid is consistent with community preference. We are not looking to build projects in places that the community does not want them. Next slide, please. In regards to next steps, this month, we expect to hear back from the CPUC and hope for approval for our solicitation documents that we will use to solicit bids for these two programs. We're also in progress to launch a dedicated webpage for these two programs. Seems to be an edit that was lost, but it is soon to be completed, although it was not finished before this board meeting. My apologies. From now until August of this year, we'll be starting to conduct outreach with solar developers to make them aware that these projects are something that they should be bidding on, and potential community sponsors by developing collateral and hosting multiple webinars. In addition, we have the solicitation documents that we hope to go live on our website within 60 days of receiving the CPUC's approval. In early 2024, we hope to receive bids for these two programs from solar developers. And in 2025, we'll have customers auto-enrolled as new projects come online. We don't have a current deadline. It's to be determined for when we will release the RFO for DAC-GT and CSGT and our expected responses. But pending commission approval, we'll have those dates hopefully soon. And of course, we're happy to return to the CACN board with any updates on these two items. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions after the board comment.
Great. Thank you, Tessa. Appreciate that. Kimberly, any public comment?
There are no public comments.
So again, turn it over to the board members for any comments. Item is just to receive and file, so no motion is necessary. Yes, Mary Curie.
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question. It's more of a hypothetical. Just to make sure that I understood it correctly. So let's say that there's a school board district that's interested in a project. They would be the community sponsor because they're the applying entity, correct? I mean, hypothetically.
Hypothetically, if the school was located in an eligible DAC, then they could be a community sponsor for the project.
Correct. So, yeah, I was going to go into that. So then if they're within the Cal and Byers Green, zone. But what I wasn't clear on was the 20% credit, 25% output. Does that mean by just having the project, you receive a credit on their bill? But the output, is that the electricity that they're generating? They get that wasn't clear on me.
Thank you for your question. These are highly complicated programs, and I welcome such complicated questions. I think it would be beneficial if we could go back to the second slide, I believe. One more, that one. Thank you. So for CSGT, we have the allocation of 4.38 megawatts. So the CSGT project site doesn't have to be on the community sponsor's land, but they would receive, similar to just a residential customer receiving a 20% bill discount. The community sponsor would receive that 20% bill discount as well. And 25% of 4.38 is about, a little over 1 megawatt, but they can't, if they use more than one megawatt, then that wouldn't be supported by the generation of that project site, if that makes sense.
Thank you. And then a separate question, the communities that aren't included in Cal EnviroScreen, you mentioned the other source of funding, right? The gap, I think, yes. But is there a way to get on the Cal EnviroScreen? I mean, can you elaborate on that?
The Cal EnviroScreen is a tool that was created that obviously, I'm sure you're familiar with it. So I won't waste your time on that portion of the answer. The CPUC has the requirements that they made for what's defined as a DAC. The GAP proceeding isn't another source of funding. The GAP proceeding is essentially an evaluation of the green access programs. And so in that proceeding, our participation, we requested a change to make the 25% style of DACs to 40% to allow a bigger pool of eligibility. So if that were to be approved, we could expand from Chula Vista, National City, and City of San Diego to some other locations such as 3 census tracts in Imperial Beach, 2 in La Mesa, and 2 in unincorporated San Diego for a total of 56 additional census tracts.
That's exactly what I was hoping to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from my colleagues? Not seen any. Well, thank you for the presentation. I'll ask a couple of questions, but like you said, these programs that are designed to be helpful are often very complicated, which is why it's great we have such amazing employees to help us understand. What caught my attention was the auto enroll. So what does that mean? Is someone who's already part of the CARE and FARA programs would then automatically be enrolled in this, or what does auto enroll mean?
It's very similar to the auto enrollment of a CCA. So the only difference is the eligibility is a bit finer. So we have the geographic location of where those DACs are, the census tracts, and then we can overlap those with customers, residential customers that are located in those DACs that are enrolled in CARE and FARA. However, we are going to, part of our marketing and outreach for these 2 programs, since it's those that are eligible for CARE and FARA, is to try to increase enrollment for those residential customers that really should be on CARE and FARA, but aren't yet.
And then since we apparently were allocated a certain megawatt, is that just being spread thinner if we have more sites, which all in favor of? Just trying to understand how that math works.
So the megawatt allocation is based on the amount of eligible customers in a DAC and its relation to our megawatt allocation or that load. You might have to repeat your question again.
So it sounds like if there's more folks that are eligible because we've expanded the number of sites, that the megawatt allocation would actually go up because there would be more demand.
That's a very wonderful question. I'll have to get back to you.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going with it as we try to navigate these complicated processes. But it sounds like it's a very positive thing for these communities. And when we talk about projects, essentially we're talking about rooftop solar.
We're not talking about rooftop solar.
Okay.
Customers that are enrolled in them are not eligible to participate in DAC GT and CSGT.
Okay.
The project site would be not on a customer's rooftop. Instead, it would be hopefully on a member agency's land where they would install the solar plant and it would be delivered to those residences.
Okay. I'd be curious to see how this works out in terms of, well, I don't know that kind of megawatts, how many square feet or acreage you need for solar to deliver that. I know that this program's in good hands, so we'll look forward to updates as you navigate through our processes and the CPUC process. But thank you for going through all this work. So, and not seeing any other comment. Oh, yes.
Question. just to better understand that last requirement, would the land need to be undeveloped or would it be vacant, like a former maybe industrial use of a different industry?
I'll make note of your question because it's a very good one and I'll have to come back to you as well.
Okay, thank you. It's heartening to know we're all grappling to understand exactly what this means and how to operate it. So thank you.
Thank you. And we'll look forward to more updates. Like I said, these are very complicated programs, trying to thread the needle on something that is beneficial to our communities of concern, our disadvantaged communities or our under-resourced community. So with that, well, thank you, Tessa, for the presentation. And like I said, we look forward to your good work on this and more updates as it moves along. And thank you for the caveat 2025. It'll take a while. All right, with that, we will now move on to item 16. This is to approve an update to the collections and delinquency policy to include residential person. I'll turn it over to Lucas Utah to present. Lucas, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Dr. Eric Washington. Lucas and Joe and I will be tag teaming this presentation. Just wanted to be sensitive to the fact that this policy is an update to a policy that was previously approved. Lucas will get into more of the detail in terms of the history, but essentially this update is to take into consideration our residential community members that may be having challenges with paying their utility bills in this post-COVID environment and the overall economic landscape. We want to make sure that we have a framework that will allow us to remain sensitive to those realities for our community members, as well as making sure that we have visibility in terms of the implications on our fiscal resilience and overall liability. As I presented in the budget where we increased sort of an allocation in terms of what we anticipate we may not be unable to collect from our customers and yet still be able to manage the fiscal liability of our organization and still treat our members with dignity and with respect, keeping in mind the challenges they may face with regard to keeping abreast of their utility bills. And so with that, I will yield to our Director of Data Analytics and Account Services.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. Good evening, Chairman Cover, Board of Directors. My name is Lucas Uto. I'm the Director of Data Analytics and Account Services. I'll be presenting to you all the need for more to adopt the remainder of the collection of delinquency policy to also cover residential customers. So as a way of history, in 2021, the board then did approve a similar policy, but in 2021, we were not serving residential customers. And so the policy adopted and the board then was specific to only non-residential customers. And what the board instructed staff then was to essentially analyze the trends of the residential delinquency once we got to phase 3, which was our largest residential phase, and subsequently phase 4, and so on and so forth. So today, I definitely will be giving you an overview of why we need this policy, talk about the objectives of the policy, which, as Dr. Washington alluded to, is just to provide the framework for staff and our back office provider to essentially better serve our customers, treat them with respect and dignity, and also set clear expectations on the handling of the past due customer charges, which then allow for us to minimize and mitigate our bad debt exposure. And that is in alignment with our overall long-term financial viability, with resiliency and competitiveness of our organization. I'm also going to give you a quick high-level overview of the programs that are available to our customers. We do actually have a dedicated webpage on our website that essentially articulates all of the programs that our customers can access. I will also be giving you a high-level overview of the state of arrearages, not only for San Diego Community Power, but at the statewide level, based on the IOUs. And then specifically as it relates to the residential customers. And then lastly, preview the state of arrearages for San Diego Community Power. So anything that is past 120 days or more. Next slide, please. So in terms of the programs assisting customers, we do have a host of programs that are administered through SDG&E. We do have bill discount programs such as Care and Fair. We also do have bill assistance programs such as Lehigh that customers can qualify for. We also have the arrearage management program, which I think is a really great tool. Simply because if a customer pays their current charges, there is a mechanism for them to get forgiveness up to $8,000 of their prior arrearage balance, so long as they maintain payment of their current bill balance. There's also CAP, which is the California Arrearage Payment Program. So for this one, there was over $2 billion out of the general fund that the governor released as a function of the pandemic to help assist customers get current. We work very closely with SDG&E, and I'm actually happy to announce that our region, so San Diego, actually got in excess of $100 million of those funds. And customers didn't have to apply for these funds. They were automatically applied on their bills. There was a 2021 CAP rollout that took place in early 2022, and then also a 2022 CAP rollout that just concluded in January of this year. On to the next slide, please. There's also a program out there called PIP, which again, this one is geared more towards our customers that are on fixed income. So some of our elderly customers and customers who are on fixed income that they can qualify for. We also have a lot of payment plans that are out there, essentially to help customers get some sort of a runway for them to keep up with their arrearages. And the one thing that I definitely want to articulate is the fact that these programs can be accessed by our customers through SDG&E. They're not SDG&E programs, they're state, some of them are state, some are federal funded programs, but customers can qualify for them via SDG&E, and they would automatically get that very same coverage as far as SDCP charges are concerned. Now, as part of the policy proposal before the board today, we recognize that we do have a host of customers that are falling behind in the residential customer class. And our policy is going to allow for us to reach those customers and inform them of all of the programs and all of these resources that are available to them through the notification that we're going to be doing via physical mailers and also electronically for any customer that has an email address on file with us. And the one thing that we're very cognizant of is in the policy itself, for customers that are participating in Care or Fair, we are going to give them an additional runway so then we can reach out to them via the mailers and also through boots on the ground to go into those communities to talk to customers as we're tailing around San Diego to make sure that they understand that there are resources available to them. And the one thing that I definitely want to plug is the fact that in terms of the time frame that we would consider a past due balance to be delinquent, we're giving customers almost 60 days in addition to what SDG would give them as far as considering their past due balance to be delinquent. And throughout that time frame, we're constantly going to try and reach out to those customers, make sure that they understand that not all is lost. There are resources and we want to work with them to ensure that they can get current on their bills and put them on payment plans if need be, provide resources that they can qualify for as far as arrearage management program that essentially allows for them to get debt forgiveness, et cetera, et cetera. On to the next slide, please. So then what what is the state of arrearages in our region? This chart here essentially captures the number of customers in arrears by the utility. This data set is pulled from the California Public Utilities Commission, and you can clearly see that year over year, particularly during the pandemic, the arrearages have increased for the most part. And on to the next slide, please. And that very same trend specific to residential customers is clearly visible in terms of, the fact that customers in the residential customer class have fallen behind. And that trajectory has increased, particularly during the winter or earlier in the winter, January and February, when the natural gas prices and the natural gas bills went astronomically higher. On to the next slide, please. So then what does this mean for San Diego Community Power? This slide essentially encapsulates the state of arrearages as of June 20th. I definitely want to make it a point that this is a snapshot at a point in time. Every single day we are getting customer payments. Every single day we're getting new transactions. So this is churning daily. But this was the snapshot at a point in time as it relates to preparation for this board meeting. And what you can clearly see, so on the left-hand side, that graph depicts the arrearages or the essentially the receivables that are 120 days or greater. And you clearly see month over month that is increasing. And then on the right-hand side, what that captures is essentially the exact same thing broken down between commercial and residential customers. And you can clearly see that for commercial, since we do have that policy, it is relatively flat. Whereas for the residential customers, we've seen a month over month increase in terms of the past due balances being aged 120 days or greater. And so we believe now is the time for us to essentially get the board to consider and adopt the policy to cover residential customers. And the reason why the timing is now is because as a function of the pandemic, no IOU was enforcing any sort of collections and or delinquency handling protocols, simply because there was a moratorium that expired in September of 2021. And then with the California Arrearage Payment Program, there were actually a few provisions by CSD where IOUs could not enforce collections. And now that we're outside of that period, we've received confirmation from SDG&E that they're turning on the residential credit engine effective late March. And they do expect for that process to essentially be fully operational throughout the summer. And so it definitely compels for San Diego Community Power to also be in lockstep in being able to provide these requisite resources to customers to allow for them to understand the resources that are out there and available to them to help them get current with their past due balances. That actually concludes my presentation for tonight. I'm happy to take any questions and or comments.
I was gonna say, Dr. Washington, you have any?
No, just I wanted to first of all thank Lucas and his team as well as the finance team for doing the analysis to really make sure we really framed this policy. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chair, and we'll take whatever questions you have.
Okay, thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Dr. Washington. And do we have any public comment?
There are no public comments.
So I will turn it over to the board for any comments, questions. This is an action item, so we'll need a motion. Number.
You can start down there.
Way down there. First of all, I want to thank you for your presentation and all your hard work. I can feel your heart and every single thing you were saying. And especially, coming, like you said, coming out of COVID, people don't understand that we're still recovering. People's whole savings for many, many years came to save the day for many employees and to pay the rent. And people think we're we're barely in black numbers, right? And a lot of people lost their jobs, and there's a lot of people and a lot of owners and a lot of people that were just using their savings up. And, and also going down the line, just for you to be saying all these things and being mindful, is taking to us as struggling customers. For me, it's a whole nother level of a difference. And I appreciate that. And I wanted to ask you if you could walk me through what it would look like at an individual level. If I'm falling behind in my bills, what does that outreach look like to our customers? Really briefly.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So for our customers falling behind, there are, as I was explaining earlier, there are a number of programs. And there are a number of avenues that a customer can take advantage of. So in terms of the policy that is in front of the board today, for any customer who essentially gets on a payment plan through SDG&E, from the San Diego Community Power perspective, that to us would signify that this customer is in good faith, making an effort to try and get current on their bill, and we would not subject them to any sort of a delinquency handling protocol, which would mean, we would not send them additional information in terms of the resources. We're saying for as long as the customer makes an effort to either get on a payment plan and or take advantage of the resources that are available to them, we would consider that as a good faith effort. And so we're not going to consider them as being delinquent necessarily, simply because we want to work with them to make sure that they can get the help that they need to be able to get current on their bills. And part of that entails not only the communication via the physical mailer and or email, but also us going into the communities and saying, hey, there is this program, depending on, the conversation with the customer. If a customer was to come to us and say, hey, I'm falling behind on my bill and I don't know what to do, we would say, well, we totally empathize. These are some of the programs based on your account and based on the past due arrearage aging that we believe you can qualify for. We can connect them through the right proper channels for them to enroll into these programs, just so that they can get the requisite help that they're seeking.
I appreciate that so much, just the mindfulness and how us as a public agency, as a, before I was a city council member in Chula Vista, I used to work for the city of San Diego during COVID. So I know how much the pain and suffering for thousands and thousands of people came across. And that's what we need in public representation. We need people to think holistically and to have that compassion for also just identifying the good actors as well. And I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Member Hinton.
Thank you. Yeah, that was very helpful and easy to understand. I have a few questions and then one clarification. So I understand the moratorium was up in September to initiate enforcement. And then what did you say took place in late March?
The California arrearage.
Oh, the program began.
Correct. And so as a function of CAP, the IOUs that received the funding had to essentially not enforce collection for a specific period of time. I think it was 3 months, if I remember correctly. And so none of the IOUs have enforced any sort of their collections and or delinquency handling protocols as a function of the pandemic, and then subsequently as a function of CAP fund disbursement requirements. But then now that we're outside of that period, all of the IOUs, so including SDG&E, they are starting to turn on their collections and delinquency handling protocols. And that process is going to be gradual. Again, I think even our SDG&E contacts are very mindful of the fact that we're just emerging, hopefully, from a pandemic, and being very cognizant of the fact that, customers, our neighbors, our brothers and sisters fell behind, and we have to be very methodical and thoughtful in how we help them get back to where they want to be.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why we haven't necessarily taken the initiative to bring this item to the board until now, because the IOUs are starting to turn on their residential credit engines. And so what that means is customers who are delinquent, they are going to start receiving some sort of notification from SDG&E saying, hey, you are past due. Whereas that was not happening until 2023, in other words.
I see. Yeah, so it's a very critical time right now for us to be getting this information out and supporting our customers that
Exactly.
participate in those programs.
Yes.
To me, I mean, this is a monumental effort and it's not just because we're nice people, but it's also because there's $25 million in arrearages, which are important for us to be able to get back. So I think to me, we can kind of compare it to the effort of the 2020 census that was just like we couldn't only rely on the government to be able to get the word out for folks to participate in the census, but we also had to rely on trusted community messengers. And so perhaps part of our boots on the ground strategy would include engaging those trusted messengers, because it seems like, there might be distrust, there might be, we're essentially the government that's coming to get our money. And so I think we need to put a lot of effort into making sure that there's the support to let people know that, there's going to be some forgiveness, there is going to be the support beyond just what we can do with our tables at community events. And then perhaps, this is the part I'm not an expert in, but I think that we might need to build this out a little bit, is learning about those folks who are, what are the patterns that we're seeing in the delinquencies and what do they need from us? Do they need webinars where they can actually engage the folks that are administering this money from different agencies to be able to ask questions? Is it, somebody actually going into their house and like showing them how to complete the paperwork? Clearly there's a lot of compassion in your presentation, and I think we'll probably need to build that effort as we go forward as well. So those are my comments, and thank you.
Thank you. I think in terms of the approach, so we're approaching this from a variety of different angles, including even engaging with our legislative stakeholders. A few of us at staff level have been we've been engaged with PERN, which is like an advocacy entity at the state level, to essentially see ways in which perhaps we can get the legislator or the legislative body at the state level look at arrearages and perhaps provide additional support. We do know that they, out of the 2022 COP bonds that were allotted, not all of them were utilized. And so there's $550 million that's out there that we've heard is intended to go back to the general fund. And we're essentially engaging in those discussions to say, hey, this is still, the arrearages are still out there and customers do require this help. So perhaps maybe, we need to consider, or rather to get the folks up in Sacramento to consider perhaps bringing the $550 million back, just so that we can help offset their arrearage exposure, especially pertinent to our residential customers. So there are a number of things that we're doing, and I absolutely agree. Working with CDOs or trusted stakeholders in the communities themselves is part of that grand strategy that we definitely look to employ, in addition to meeting customers where they are, right? At swap meets, at community events, et cetera.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Fully support this. Very stark difference, right, between the commercial and residential. Nobody wins when someone's sent to collections because we don't recuperate our, lost, funds, and the impact on, people's quality of life and well-being is tremendous. To Member Chavez's point, there were those fortunate enough to dip into their savings, but most people don't even have savings, right? Especially in Imperial Beach, we're a workforce community. I remember the pandemic, people telling me I'm behind 12, 13 months in my bills, my electricity bills. So I fully support your idea of legislatively pursuing some of that funding. You don't want to leave anything on the table. And if we can figure out a way that we can provide that assistance in a different manner through a different vehicle, then fully support that. But again, very much support the approach and very much support this policy. So thank you for your work.
I'll jump in with a few questions. Again, thank you for the very good work and pulling this together. Ironically, I heard a report from SDG&E earlier today. And I appreciate the greater level of transparency and the candidness about where we stand with delinquencies. And to that point, we see ourselves as distinct from SDG&E. The customer just sees one bill. So when SDG&E sends their notices out, is it speaking to the entirety of the bill or just for their portion of the bill? Or how does that dynamic work and how do we intersect in that conversation?
Thank you, Chair. That's an excellent question. In terms of what SDG&E sends, it has to be representative of the entire account balance, including their transmission and delivery past due charges, as well as SDCP and or CCA charges wherever applicable. They are the bill agent, and so they do have that responsibility for at least attempting to collect, not only on their behalf, but on the behalf of the CCAs as well.
And then to the point that you raised, and that I heard from my colleagues, how does our more compassionate approach fit in if SDG&E is going after the entire bill with their program?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the approach, we do have regular sync ups with SDG&E, where in terms of the perhaps messaging and or the contents of their communication, we can actually ideate on, but obviously, I mean, it's entirely up to them with regards to what they send out to the customer. And then as far as the timing of when SDG&E considers a past due balance to be delinquent, for residential customers based on their Rule 11, I believe it's within 19 days, right? Whereas with our policy, we're saying we will send the customer notification at the 60-day mark. So we've given the customer a longer runway. And then following that, we would also send a second notification at the 90-day mark, right? Before doing anything else. And so we want to be very cognizant of the fact that our customers are truly our cornerstone of what we do. And we definitely want to put community in our approach at every single turn.
And I very much appreciate that. And I appreciate the comments of member Chavez and member Hins that how we connect with individuals, government tries to do good things, to have good programs, but we're not necessarily a trusted voice when we go out there and try to explain to people. So use of those kinds of voices to help spread the word. The program that SDCP has been doing over the past couple of years to introduce ourselves to the community, I think it's been pretty fantastic. But sometimes it just takes a different voice, a different face there to believe that there is a program really that helps people, because I know it can be pretty daunting for individuals, as we've heard discussed. So thank you for that very, very good work and that approach and that whole culture that reflects what community power is all about. So it is very heartening that everything that we're doing always kind of comes back to that culture. So very much appreciate that. If there's no, oh yes, go ahead.
One more.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave before I say this. I might have missed it, but if not, I just wanted to throw it out there that I think we also need to be mindful of our elderly community, those who struggle with disability and language barriers, right? I come from my own personal experience that when I went to my grandma's house, I would look at her bills, right? And if you add that they had a language barrier, right? So I think I didn't see that in the presentation. I might have missed it, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
Well said, well said. This is an action item, so we'll need a motion to move staff recommendation. And a second. Okay. So we have a motion to move the staff recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0. Now, on to agenda item 17. Which is approval of a renewable power purchase agreement with Yellow Pine Solar 3 LLC. And I will turn over to Andrea Torres to present this item.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Torres. I'm a senior portfolio manager. It's an honor to present this PPA to Chair Acaba and the board for the consideration. slide. Just to take a step back and why we're executing this CPA, you all know, but for the benefit of our public, we have a goal of securing 75% renewables by 2027 and 100% renewable source by 2035. And long-term PPAs are a key tool to meet that target. They provide revenue certainty for developers against which they can finance really capital-intensive projects, incentivizing that new build of renewable energy and storage. They also provide SPCP with power supply cost certainty for our portfolio, as Dr. Washington mentioned earlier. In addition, the CPUC requires load-serving entities to secure significant long-term power purchase agreements for resource advocacy from new incremental generation for deliveries through 2026. So this PPA from NextEra, it came to us called the Yellow Pine 3 project through our October 2022 renewables and storage RFP. It was shortlisted due to the quantitative valuation we do on the economic value for solar organization and our customers, but also other more qualitative criteria for metrics that are important to us: project location, community benefits, workforce development, environmental impacts, and the like. So this particular project is a co-located 35 megawatt solar, 35 megawatt battery energy storage project located in Clark County, Nevada. This PPA is for just a portion of a 150 megawatt phase of a larger 500 megawatt Yellow Pine project in Nevada. Their project's located on BLM land, and the project secured its special use permit and BLM right-of-way permit back in 2020 and 2021 when it initially applied for the full 500 megawatts. Next slide. So I'm just going to highlight some very high-level key PPA terms. The product associated with this PPA is the renewable or RPS volumes, those megawatt hour deliveries to help reach those renewable targets, as well as capacity, all capacity and ancillary service. I mentioned that price certainty. So this PPA has fixed pricing over a 20-year term. While it is in Nevada, it is directly tied to the CAISO. And so it doesn't require import rights to secure the energy and capacity for the project. It does have 35 megawatts of what's called full capacity deliverability status, or FCDS. And that's important for that RA value and that midterm reliability value. The guaranteed commercial operation dates for this project are phased. So the storage component is expected to come online in June of 2025, with the solar component to follow. And when we negotiated those terms to get that storage capacity value online as soon as possible. As with all of our PPAs, STCP would receive financial compensation for failure to meet certain development milestones, as well as failure to perform under the contract once it's operational. Next slide. I'm going to touch on just a few high-level workforce development and community benefits associated with this project. So this project will secure a project labor agreement as it's done with its prior phases. The first phase of the larger Yellow Pine project that we're not contracting with is going to come online, I believe, later this summer. And NextEra has a number of projects under development or operational in Nevada, so they have a more programmatic approach to their community engagement. And so a few examples include providing sole sponsorship of developing solar curriculum and research at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, including mentoring a senior design project focused on these types of systems. They host a renewable energy training simulation lab at the regional local university colleges. They do presentations at high schools about the career opportunities that are available and the importance of renewable energy. And they have an established internship program to help create career opportunities at NextEra. We are recommending this project for approval for the aforementioned benefits. I'm just going to highlight a few additional ones here. The project is expected to deliver at least approximately 100,000 megawatt hours of renewable energy per year, in addition to those important energy management capacity benefits that storage can provide. The pricing was competitive, comparable to other project offerings, and that's why it's shortlisted as part of that solicitation. And NextEra is a very experienced developer, owner, operator. They're among the world's largest renewable generators and energy storage developers, and so we can benefit from that experience as this project goes under construction and operates over a 20-year life. Next slide. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
All right, thank you, Andrea, for that. Kimberly, is there any public comment?
There are no public comments.
All right. Before I turn over to the board members, Mayor McCann and myself, as part of the Energy Contracts Working Group, did hear this project, and we both agreed that this was a good opportunity for community power, and we recommended that it be moved forward to the board. And with that, I will turn it over to the board. If there are any questions or comments, we will need a motion to approve the 20-year renewable power purchase agreement with Yellow Pine Solar. Any questions or? I'll throw a couple of things out that we really appreciate. It is out of state. And I think that's kind of the reality that's trying to meet our business goals. But the community benefits they come up with, that it is operating under a project labor agreement with all the requirements under that, made it a good sales. So if there is no comments on board, I probably shouldn't make the motion. But
I will move approval.
well, okay. And not seeing any comment by the board. All in favors?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes.
Yes.
Who seconded the motion?
Member Parent.
Thank you.
So thank you, Andrea, for that. And as the board is aware and the public should be aware, we also called a special meeting of the board to introduce another item. And since we are past the 6:30 item, I've been told that it is appropriate for just to roll into that one as well. So that is on the special meeting, which is a slightly smaller packet in front of you. It is listed as item 1, which is to consider approval of a renewable power purchase agreement with ORNI 30 LLC, or we'll call it the ORMAT project. Probably a little bit easier.
Mr. Chair, could I just also note
Yes.
that the board will be returning to recessing the regular meeting and come back to the remaining agenda items after the special meeting.
Okay, thank you for,
Wanted to note that for the public.
okay, thank you for that reminder. So again, we'll turn it over to you, Andrea, on this item as well.
Yes, hello again. So I'm excited to present this other PPA for your consideration. In addition to those earlier goals and targets I mentioned for renewable capacity, there are also additional goals specific that are related to this project. So we are committed to securing 600 megawatts of new local energy and or battery storage projects in San Diego and Imperial counties by 2035. We are also seeking to create high quality jobs in the renewable energy sector that support healthy families and this project is the Brawley Solar and Storage Project with ORMAT Technologies. That's the other LLC is a subsidiary of ORMAT. It was originally bid into SDCP back in 2020 through an RFP for renewable storage. However, the negotiations were put on hold due to supply chain issues. And we picked up those negotiations earlier this year. This project is similarly sized as the other one I mentioned. It's 42 megawatts of solar and 35 megawatts of battery energy storage in the city of Raleigh in Imperial County. It's located on privately owned land, previously zoned for agriculture as adjacent to a wastewater treatment, the city's wastewater treatment plant. And it's sharing interconnection with the existing Raleigh geothermal power plant substation. The permit, the conditional use permit was approved by the Imperial County Board of Supervisors back in May. Next slide. I'm gonna, at the very high level, the PPA terms look similar here, so I'll just go through some distinctions from the prior presentation. This project, despite being in Imperial County, it is an import project from the CAISO perspective. So we do need import rights for this project. But it has a similar guaranteed commercial operation date of April of 2025. So that, again, important for that midterm reliability in RA value. I'll go on to the next slide in the interest of time. So this community benefits and workforce development is important for all of the projects we contract for. But of course, of particular importance to these local projects, and we do consider Imperial County local with all of our goals. It is located within a community of concern. And we worked hard to ensure that that this project enabled the achievement of shared goals around creating high quality jobs and hiring members of the local community and training and affording opportunities for a growing workforce for the energy transition. So to that end, Ormat is committed to at least 80% of all construction workers be local to Imperial County and or union labor. They've also committed to hiring union employed C10 electrical contractors with certified electrical technicians. They are committed to a 20% journeyman apprenticeship ratio for that work under a joint labor management electrical apprenticeship. Ormat will contribute. So that was what we have in our PPA. They also are making contributions as part of their conditional use permit. So they will contribute $136,000 a year under the county's public benefit program, which is administered by the county and an associated committee. They'll also pay $550,000 to the county to mitigate the loss of farmland. This isn't prime farmland, but it is a priority of the county to collect those funds to mitigate for the loss of that farmland. And they're committed to providing a prevailing wage. They're also offering to develop a clean energy and battery storage workforce training program to be administered and rolled out within 20 miles of the project. And so they provide that curriculum, but that SDCP would take that curricula and roll it out in partnership with educational institutions, vocational training programs, etc. Next slide. So we again are recommending this PPA for approval. In addition to those aforementioned benefits, just highlighting the experience that Ormat provides, in particular, their experience with advanced battery applications. They also, the project will provide over 120,000 megawatt hours of locally sourced renewable energy, in addition to other energy management capacity benefits. And again, the pricing was competitive with comparable offerings that were received in recent RFOs. Next slide. I think that, yes, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Well, thank you, Andrea. Do we have any public comment on this?
Yes, Christina Marquez is here to
Thank you.
3 minutes.
Good evening, Christina Marquez, speaking on behalf of 3,600 union electricians and power professionals of IBEW Local 569. We want to urge you to approve the power purchase agreement for the Orney 30 solar and storage project in Brawley. The solar and storage project is important to help in meeting local and state requirements to lower GHGs, greenhouse gas emissions, because we are in a climate crisis and we need more of these projects to achieve these goals. Because there is a strong labor language in this PPA on this project, it will help to employ Imperial County residents as opposed to out-of-state residents. IBEW 569 is putting local people to work with almost a 90% local hire rate in Imperial County. And investing in the community by providing skilled training so residents have an opportunity to better themselves while earning a living and providing for their families. Working on these projects, the workers are provided full family health care benefits, a pension to retire with dignity, and residents have a real shot at a middle-class opportunity. We can't thank the staff of SDCP enough on their tireless work to make the PPA come together. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and IBEW urges you to vote yes in approving this power purchase agreement. Thank you.
Okay.
There are no more public comments.
Well, thank you, Ms. Marquez, for appearing and the good work that you and IBEW did make this possible. A remarkable collaboration between IBEW format and our amazing employees at Community Power to work through this. As the board might have guessed, it was a special agenda. This came together at the last minute, but it came together. That's what's the important thing. In a place where all the parties feel very good and very strong about this. And so I'll just quickly highlight, in addition to what Ms. Marquez and Andrea said, we did make a commitment, especially for the newest board members. Not only did we set our ambitious goals for renewable energy, but we also made a commitment to locally sourced power. Locally being defined more about the labor market rather than jurisdictional boundaries. And that is key, while this is a key addition to our portfolio going forward. And especially the labor components that Andrea mentioned were really key to bring everybody on board, because it's a commitment by Community Power to ensure that not only are we meeting our ambitious goals, but we're creating good jobs and leaving a legacy of being able to, especially in remote communities like Imperial Valley, where IBEW has been so assertive in making sure that good jobs, good paying jobs with good benefits and training and apprenticeships are being created, are happening. And that's part of our contribution to, again, the community portion of Community Power going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to the rest of the board. If you have any questions, Member Aguirre.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to echo your comments and thank IBEW 569 for all of your work, and Andrea and staff. Very supportive of this project because of the labor component, the local hire 90%. That's quite impressive. So very supportive of that. Very supportive of the workforce training, the locals. But I do have a question regarding, and you might not know this because I know this is something that the county arranged, the 136K. What is that specifically going to be?
Yeah, so there's been the county board, I listened in on the conditional use permit hearings that took place over 2 weeks. There's a lot of attention on revamping that program, to my understanding, with the county and having an oversight committee on that. And there's a recent, I'm happy to send you, there's a guidebook. It's very, very short and brief, but it characterizes the type of programs and grants you can get. I think it's up to $25,000 that you can apply for. You can be part of a, like whether it's a school or arts program or other sort of community related programs are eligible to receive those funds.
Great, yeah, and I very much welcome if you can share that with me.
Yeah.
The second question I had, the the farmlands that where the project's gonna be, were they active farmlands that had workers?
No, they were not. There are adjacent active farms, I believe. I don't know how long that farm was fallow. But yeah, I don't know, but I know that any conversion of farmland, whether fallow or not, you know, there's concerns about potential for growing crops in the future.
Yeah, of course, but I'm thinking more so the people losing their jobs. Potentially.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
If there's workers there, farm workers that, you know, they sell the land, they're out of a job, and where do they go, right? But it's good to hear that in this particular case. They were not.
Yeah, there was no such discussion about that or the use permit, and my conversations with Ormat did not indicate any of that type of.
Yeah, so thank you again, and thanks for all your work.
We need a motion or more questions?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
And second by member Chavez. Not seeing any other questions, all in favor to move forward with the power purchase agreement with RMAC? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes 5-0. So again, thank you, Ms. Marquez and everybody at IBEW and Andrea for the good work, the tireless work that all of you put in to get this to a very, very good place that this board could unanimously support. So with that, as reminded by the council, we will go back to the regular agenda. And to our Theo, is there any report? All right, Karen,
There is, Chair.
take it away.
And noting that we are 5 minutes to 7, I will be quick. All right, so we have launched our inaugural Jedi Council, and this is made up of volunteers from each of our departments and sponsored at the executive level. Each member serves a 1-year term with the goals and objectives to be built off of our 2-day Jedi training that we completed last year and to be further defined during the first series of meetings. One of the ultimate goals is to operationalize our core values by embedding them in the DNA of our organization, starting with our first core value, which is Jedi, and for those not familiar, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We also have a couple other HR activities going on. Our HR team has completed an internal website with all of our tools and resources now available. And we also are building, using a Lattice software platform, the ability to take all of our strategic plan goals and build them into a software system down to each individual to connect all of those dots. We had done that sort of bootstrapped it through PowerPoint, Excel, and Word, and now we're building it into a software system so everybody can see how each one of their goals ties into the larger system and also how they can grow and develop within our organization. Lastly, as you saw with our budget, we are still hiring. This will go on for the next year. We are looking to add quite a few more folks to our team, and these are the roles that we have currently outstanding. So we encourage everyone to share these, and they're also available on our career page. So if you do know anyone interested, that goes for all of us. Please let us know. We're hiring rapidly. All right, so this was our first time headed to Washington, DC. Byron, Laura, and I went, and we had a really intense 2-day trip with about 11 meetings, meeting our entire congressional delegation and or their staff. We also found time for a 3-hour monuments tour in the evening from 7:30 to 10:30, and that was really great as well since we were there. We met specifically with Representative Scott Peters, and that was a very notable meeting because he has agreed to send a letter in support of CCA eligibility for the IRA funding. So we were there to build our relationships, but also to ensure that CCAs have a seat at the table and are able to compete for that funding. We anticipate that most of our other members will also sign on to this letter, and that our sister CCAs are also excited. We also met with the White House Council on Environmental Quality and had a conversation regarding our ability to partner to help achieve the Biden Executive Order 14057. And that is one which requires all United States government operations to get to 100% carbon-free energy by 2030. So they were very interested in learning how we can, what load we already serve for the Department of Defense and the Navy and government here. And so we believe it's the beginning of a nice, strong partnership with them as well.
Excellent.
Great. So we also have been out and about in the community. Here you can see a couple of highlights. We sponsored a North Park Music Festival, and we hosted a Flip the Switch event on that day where we welcomed 5 new Power 100 businesses, local 100 businesses in North Park, which included the North Park Observatory, the Buac Cider House, the Granada House, Home and Hound, and Revival Eyewear. So that was fun to see that we are focusing not just on our large corporations and businesses, but also on our smaller ones who also have values aligned with ours. We also celebrated and supported the LGBTQ plus community at the San Diego Equality Awards. We celebrated with San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation. And we thank Chair LaCava, Mayor McCann, and Councilmember Parrott for joining us at the EDC annual dinner. We also supported Wild Coast, which was co-founded by one of our former board members and the former mayor of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina. And they focus on conserving coastal and marine ecosystems, including studying carbon sequestered right here in San Diego's wetlands. And then, although not pictured here, last night, we had the opportunity to provide an update to Imperial Beach at their city council meeting. So thank you again, Mayor Gary, for inviting us to do that. And that's something we'd like to do with all of our member agencies in the future. Next slide. All right, and so last slide. So we are going to make 7 o'clock. We are, it's now on the dot. We would like to encourage everyone to come and march with us on Saturday, July 15th at the San Diego Pride. I know many of you will be marching with your own cities, but we want to encourage anyone who would like to join us to join our contingent and do so, and reach out to Rachel Hummel and our public affairs team if this is of interest to you. As you know, this is the largest single-day civic event in the region and among one of the largest pride parades here in the United States with over 300,000 cheering supporters. So please march, please join us. And then lastly, just thank you all. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your confidence in me, in our executive leadership, and in our entire team. We have a really amazing team. You know, we've come a really long way in the last year, and when we look at what's ahead, we're just getting started. There is so much exciting work to do. There's so much to be done. And we have the right team, we're on the right growth path, and we really thank you for the support and confidence that you've had in us so that we can go out and do great things for our community and our environment. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. Just to wrap up, do we have any comments from General Counsel?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
And one last opportunity for director comments. Yes. Member Chavez.
I want to take use of my time. I don't get to come here often. But I do want to thank all the presentations and all the hard work from staff. I can really see the heart and soul that goes into it. Before I go, I would love to use my comments to just bring up that I would like moving forward to see a little bit more create opportunities to create programs that help our community with their costs in other ways, like in childcare. I think we can incentivize, childcare has become another mortgage. It's become somewhat of a luxury. And there's not enough accessible childcare and close to home as well. So I think if there are any incentives or discounts that we can make it easier for providers, that would be largely beneficial. So I just wanted to end it with that.
All right, thank you, Member Chavez, well said. Not seeing any. This brings us to the end of our agenda.
Yes.
And I appreciate everyone's participation today. So we are adjourned until the next regular meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power on July 27th, 2023. We are adjourned.